rolling tumors to roaring lampooners, the Tigers on a Roll show starts in 3, 2, 1.
The narrative on the Plains remains one of our biggest frustrations as the Auburn football team suffers another heartbreaking SEC loss, this time falling to number 16, Missouri, 23-17 in double overtime at home in Jordan-Hare Stadium. This defeat marks a fourth consecutive loss and drops the Tigers to 3-4 on the season and 0-4 in conference play. While the defense delivered a strong performance, holding Missouri's offense to just 343 total yards and their running backs to less than 100. They also got a couple crucial stops, including a fourth quarter interception to force the overtime periods, and the offense once again sputtered in regulation and in overtime, with Jackson Arnold finishing with 207 passing yards, Cam Coleman with 6 catches for 108 yards, but the inevitable inability to convert on key drives and a couple missed field goals proved very costly for us this weekend. Hugh Freeze's Tigers now face a critical stretch to achieve bowl eligibility and needing at least 3 wins from their final 5 games, which at this point I don't think are guaranteed. And if you were able to tune in to the post-game pod, we might re-record that because the audio for the guest was bad. But essentially what he had said at one point in the pod is that he sees 5 and 7 being more likely than the alternative, which we're looking at now as 8-4, which is unfortunate news for the Auburn faithful, the football program, and more than likely Hugh Freeze's tenure as Auburn's head coach. And as the losses mount on the football field, the speculation surrounding the head coaching position has certainly intensified, and it's critical for the Auburn faithful to recalibrate expectations by separating fantasy targets in the coaching search from the realistic candidates that would eventually end up at Auburn if chosen. And it's simply acknowledge that the program is not positioned to poach the sport's current elite, meaning names like Dan Lanning are absolutely non-starters for any of us, and especially the administration and the bag holders at Auburn. And the same must be applied to Lane Kiffin. He is a proven SEC commodity, but his trajectory and reported interest levels suggest that he is more likely to entertain a move to Florida more so than he is to Auburn, if he was even to leave Ole Miss. And similarly, a fan favorite recently, Curt Cignetti, who signed a massive contract to remain at Indiana, reportedly worth $11 million annually, effectively removes him from the conversation as well. And Auburn should be hesitant to match any top-tier coaching money for a coach who has not yet proven he can sustain that success over multiple SEC cycles, and certainly face the challenges that Auburn prevents specifically. And I don't know that there is a coach in the country that sees this job as anything other than difficult day in, day out, with every impending SEC season, especially the one that we have upcoming next year, which is going to be an absolute gauntlet on the road for anybody that signs up for this job or has to coach with Hugh Freeze and this staff going into that season after having hopefully held together a high school recruiting class, hit the portal to replace the players that are inevitably going to leave, and prepare through spring ball and the fall and preseason to get Auburn in any sort of position to do markedly better than they did this year in the face of the season and the schedule that they are facing. I am not positive that there's anybody out there that can do it. And that list plausibly has some high floor candidates on it. Everyone's talking about James Franklin. The Tigers on the roll. we're not necessarily James Franklin believers. And while the arguments against him are plentiful and valid, particularly in major games, which is why we don't like it, he has demonstrated an ability to consistently build a program to his specific high standards, which would significantly raise Auburn's current floor, no doubt about that. And his buyout is manageable for an interested program, but the sentiment is that the power brokers on the Plains will ultimately not pursue him, and I tend to agree with that. I think that we need someone who's familiar with Auburn, is familiar to Auburn, and has experience in the Deep South recruiting with any efficiency and success, which is more likely where we're going to find a coach is in that next tier, which could be Rhett Lashlee, Kenny Dillingham, Eli Drinkwitz, Jon Sumrall. And, those are all quality coaches in their own respect, but each has its obstacles, excluding Jon Sumrall, who I think right now is leading the group of coaches that could potentially come to Auburn, especially seeing as Lashlee being well compensated by SMU with plenty of money flowing through or being available to that program out in Dallas. Kenny Dillingham is coaching at his alma mater, Arizona State, and has certainly found success with the talent pool available to him on that side of the Mississippi. And Drinkwitz, who's currently an SEC coach of the team that Auburn just lost to. He might be willing to move, but acquiring him from Missouri would still require a massive financial commitment to get Drink, and Drink could emerge as perhaps the most realistic and proven target for Auburn from that group of coaches, but I still don't see that happening, which brings us to a third tier of Power Five coaches and some up and coming, or Power Four coaches and some up and coming Group of Five coaches that have some peripheral SEC experience, or at least could perform at a high level as a head coach in the SEC, and that is Brent Key, Clark Lee, and Jon Sumrall is where he comes up here, and he may be the most realistic option at the end of the year. I would say right now the door appears to be closed on Bobby Petrino as a head coach, but if Arkansas doesn't commit to him and Auburn is willing to drop a bag as a coordinator, I think that Bobby Petrino could empower this offense to look markedly better and improved this time next year as they do currently. And it is undeniable that he should be considered, especially if Hugh maintains his tenure at Auburn, but Auburn still demands elite offensive performances. Petrino could be the play caller there. And for that to happen, obviously, you would keep your head coach, but take away those play calling abilities, which he so cherishes. And that would put an offensive minded OC. You keep DJ Durkin and head coach Hugh Freeze in a CEO and recruiting role, and in my opinion, that might be one of the better instances and a realistic instance that you could see Auburn living in over the next few months going into next season. And DJ Durkin being brought up there, unfortunately, it seems that the candidacy of DJ Durkin will not come to fruition under any circumstance, other than maybe a couple games as an interim. If that is the case, if you watched the pod over the weekend, we think that Hugh Freeze maintains his role here and goes into next season as the head coach for whatever that's worth. But if Hugh stays or Auburn goes out and finds another head coach, DJ is theoretically the coach in waiting, and I don't see Auburn making a move to promote him to head coach in any capacity, which, honestly, I think is a huge slap in the face to DJ, who has provided above serviceable levels of competition from his side of the ball, which at this rate, Nix and Freeze have absolutely not done that. Um, and I think that brings us naturally to the end of that list, which gives you two opportunities here. One of those is you keep Freeze and you bring in an OC, or you get rid of Freeze and you take a gamble on Sumrall at Tulane and see what he can do as a young guy who, by all accounts, has the ability to fit the persona that Auburn usually looks for in a coach. I think that he has the ability to win in homes, which is huge for us being a team that still relies heavily on high school recruiting, and we put a lot of weight on those, top 15, top 10 recruiting classes when we're able to get them. And I think right now that is where we sit, is the Tigers on the roll think either Hugh Freeze maintains and Auburn forces him to bring in an OC, or Hugh Freeze is ousted as the head coach and Jon Sumrall is the most prolific option we have right now to fill those shoes, and is in theory the most realistic option to be Auburn's next head coach if the coaching carousel conversation continues to involve Auburn. We will see. They still have the ability to win a few games and have one of the better records they've had in the last 3 to 6 years, but we will not know until the powers that be make a move. And before we get into Tigers on the Prowl, we're going to look back at some of the happenings that took place around the Plains this weekend and in the last week. Auburn soccer secures a vital road draw against number 19 Georgia. This result keeps the Tigers in the middle of a crowded SEC standings as they push toward the SEC tournament. And Auburn volleyball faced a challenging road trip, dropping a tight 1-3 match against number 3 Kentucky and another competitive loss, 1-3 in that match against number 16 Tennessee. Auburn volleyball has certainly demonstrated their ability to compete with the league's top teams, despite the final scores, which unfortunately is exactly what Hugh Freeze says. They are close, but we all got to believe it and see if the girls can get on that court and start winning some of these games as the fall wraps up, and see if they cannot improve their standings in the SEC and nationally, which I have faith that they can. And a women's team that has been able to do that, the women's golf team, had a stellar performance, claiming a team victory and an individual title at the Tar Heel Invitational, a significant success on the national stage for the ladies as they continue with their season. The focus for Tigers on a Prowl, of course, is going to be on the road for the 3 and 4 football team as they travel to Fayetteville, Arkansas for a clash with the Razorbacks on Saturday at 11:45 a.m. Central. This is absolutely a must-win game for Auburn's bowl hopes against a fellow SEC opponent who will be equally hungry for a victory themselves. On the hardwood, the men's basketball team continues its exhibition slate, taking on Memphis in a tune-up game at State Farm Arena in Atlanta on Thursday at 7:30 Central. And hopefully the Auburn fans can turn that neutral site into home court advantage for a young team still getting into their groove. The volleyball team returns home to Neville Arena on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central for breast cancer awareness match against Arkansas, seeking a key SEC victory to bounce back from their tough road swing, then getting back on the road for a Sunday match against OU in Norman. Soccer this week hosts their monster match game on Sunday at 2 p.m. Central at the Auburn Soccer Complex against Missouri, capping a full slate of action as their schedule heads towards postseason play in that sport. Soccer hosts the Aubie's Kid Club Halloween party and costume contest at that game, as well as continuing their Nike Air Force One raffle. Women's tennis is at the ITF W35 in Norman. Men's tennis plays in the CCB Collegiate Invitational at Country Club of Birmingham. Men's golf right now continues their competition at the Williams Cup in Wilmington, North Carolina. Equestrian, after another dominant performance, takes on Texas A&M in College Station on Friday, then on to Dallas to face SMU Saturday morning. Softball will be out in Atlanta for a matchup with Georgia Tech this week, and I am hoping that all of our Tigers can get on a roll in these important games, and we will check in with them closer to game time and, of course, recap their matchups after the fact. Meanwhile, to all the Tigers fans watching, Tigers on a roll, stay on a roll.